Welcome to our video on condensing research findings. In this video, you will learn how to select findings that will be the most impactful and communicate those key findings with concise, easy to understand language. You may be asking yourself, why is this important? Imagine this scenario. You have just completed a research study. You have pages and pages of findings. But what do you do now? How can you get the most important messages across to people outside of the research world, including policymakers, the media, and the general public? Everyone's attention is in constant demand from a seemingly endless stream of information, from social media, websites, email, television, and print, just to name a few. Delivering concise and focused research findings appeals to audiences' preferences for short, digestible content that is easy to retain. So whether your goal is to get a press release picked up by a news channel or get the attention of a state legislator, you can use our two-step approach to make sure your findings are both compelling and translated in a way that is easily understood. Let's get started with how to determine key findings. The first step is to look at your research and determine 3 to 5 key findings that will capture the most attention. You'll want to whittle your findings down to the essential, most important findings of your study. Anything additional to that can be captured in the technical report or journal article. Think of a key finding as a headline or something newsworthy from your report. When choosing key findings, it's important to ask yourself, is this compelling? A great way to help determine this is if a finding presents a problem or issue that needs to be solved. When selecting key findings, it's important to make sure they are compelling to the largest audience, not just other researchers. Refer to the news and media to see what is being talked about. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, health workforce shortages and telehealth have been popular themes in the media and in health policy. Reporters are actively looking for information on these topics. If your key findings tie into current themes, they are much more likely to generate buzz and get your research noticed by more people. Here are examples of 3 findings from a recent report. 2 of these are not true key findings. Can you pick out which one is? Did you select option B? If so, then you're correct. This finding presents a problem that needs a solution. Option A speaks to the demographics and characteristics of the study's survey respondents, but isn't vital information. Option C is too specific and therefore less relevant to a larger audience. Although options A and C are relevant to the report, they don't belong as key findings. Neither one are what we call newsworthy. Remember, not every finding is a key finding. If you're still struggling to narrow your findings down, think about which findings you'd make in an elevator pitch, where you only have 30 seconds to describe findings from your research. What would you focus on? Hopefully this helps you trim down your findings to what is most impactful. Okay, so you've chosen your 3 to 5 key findings. Now it's time to make them clear, concise, and easy to read. That's what we'll look at in the next section, how to convert key findings into concise, easy to understand language. A key finding doesn't need a lot of context. What's most important is that it is clear, concise, and easy for the largest audience to understand. Remember, your key findings are often incorporated into press releases, infographics, and social media posts with a limited amount of characters. So you want to keep key findings concise, but also in layman's terms. Try to avoid uncommonly used words or jargon whenever possible. Here are some tips on how to make your key findings easy to read. Make sure to streamline language as short as possible. A finding from your report does not need to be a paragraph. Keep it short and to the point. Aim for 10 to 20 words. Here's a good example. 53% of new physicians trained in New York plan to practice out of state. The first step to streamline language is to eliminate unnecessary words. These include articles like the or an. You also want to eliminate unnecessary clauses or adjectives. Make sure every word is essential. Remember that key findings don't have to be complete sentences. Here's an example of a finding as it was originally written in our technical report. Notice that there are multiple words and clauses that aren't necessary, which we have crossed out. Here's our new streamlined version. As you can see, we reduced the number of words from 42 words to 31, making it quicker to read. It's also important to avoid repetitiveness and run-on sentences. To avoid using the same word or phrase multiple times, utilize lists with subbullets so that you can reduce the overall number of words. If you're stringing together different ideas with periods, commas, or semicolons, you might want to break up your finding into multiple findings. Using the same example as before, here's how we condensed it even further. You can see how much easier it is to digest the information in separate, brief, bulleted lists rather than in sentence-style format. Another tip is to use the shortest form of the word. Why say utilize when you mean use, or conceptualization when you mean concept? You don't need to complicate things. Remember that the majority of your audience are not academics. The goal is to keep it simple and easy to understand. Use symbols rather than spelling out greater than, less than, more than, over, etc. Once you've condensed your findings and made them clear and concise, make sure to read your findings out loud a few times. Ask yourself, do they read easily? The next thing to keep in mind is the order of your findings. The order in which you place your findings will help tell the story you want to convey. Here's an example of two findings that work together to tell a story. The first bullet sets up the although statement, that the majority of children receive the oral health services they need. The second bullet indicates there is still a problem that needs to be solved and what those access barriers are that need improvement. Remember that it's much easier to recall a story rather than specific statistics or facts. Key findings that tell a clear story also lend themselves to user-friendly infographics, something we'll examine in greater detail in our next video. Okay, so let's summarize what we've learned. Remember, narrow your research findings down to 3 to 5 key findings. It's important to highlight true key findings, not every finding. When making your selection, make sure your findings are compelling to the largest audience possible, not just researchers. Once you've selected your key findings, make sure to keep them concise, avoid repetitiveness, eliminate unnecessary words, utilize bulleted lists, read your findings out loud, and place them in an order that tells a story. Next time you are selecting and writing key findings, challenge yourself to summarize them in as few words as possible. Remember, your end goal is to communicate the key information of your study to the widest audience in the clearest way. That does it for today. In part 2 of our Dissemination Video Series, we'll be looking at demystifying infographics. Thanks for watching! Check out our library of webinars and tutorials on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. For more information about the Health Workforce Technical Assistance Center, please visit our website.